Hey guys, how's it going? It's Joseph Henson, CPA here with Henson CPA Group. And today I want to talk to you guys about a few different things, but we're going to start off with a new series called The Financial Foundations, Building a Solid Base for Veterinary Practice Owners. A lot of veterinarians I talk to, they really struggle with just the day-to-day of running a business. They don't know where to start. They're phenomenal doctors, phenomenal surgeons, phenomenal practitioners, but they struggle with, where do I start with my business? So this is going to be one part of a multi-part series that we're going to look at. And so before anything else, let's go ahead and get to the financial objectives portion. One of the main things you're going to want to do is create a clear financial objective. So what does that entail? One of the things that entails is setting financial goals. You want your revenue target, you want your profit margin, you want to see about debt reduction, and you want a personal income that you feel comfortable making. One of the things we can talk about on this is the revenue. You want to aim for a steady annual revenue growth rate between 5 and 10%, depending on the market conditions and practice goals. So one area we can have a really quick number is if you made $100 last year, your revenue goal this year will be between $105 and $110. Always striving for a revenue increase will mean that you aren't only meeting inflation, you're outpacing inflation. The next area we can talk about is the profit margin. So a good gross profit margin is around 25 to 35%. Now, what is a profit margin? That's going to be a question you have and probably asking yourself now. The way we look at this is we calculate how efficient your revenue is at generating revenue after accounting for the cost of goods sold. So medication goes into this, potentially even a relief veterinarian could go into this, surgery costs, the use of gas in the practice. There's a lot of things that can go into a profit margin. Another thing we can look at is the net profit margin. Now, a good goal here is going to be 10 to 15% or higher. This is after all expenses. This is after your cost of goods sold for your profit margin. This is after your rent. This is after your interest payments. This is everything. Salaries, 401k, meals, bereavement gifts. This is after all of that to say, what is it? So if you made $100, a good net profit margin would be 10%, so $10, or 15%, $15. The higher, the better. Another thing we can talk about is debt reduction. This is a debt to equity ratio. You want a debt to equity ratio below 2 to 1. What does that mean though? This would show that you have a manageable level of debt relative to equity. If you get too high, you can't actually process and handle the debt load. Personal income. This is hard, guys. Every area is going to be different. Whether you live in California or if you live in Arkansas, Oklahoma, a lower cost state, you want to figure out what your ideal salary is and a target draw. What is a draw? That is how much you take out of the profit that isn't salary. You want to plan for incremental increases as the clinic grows and becomes more profitable. You can compare this to other owners that are specific to the veterinary industry and in your area. Okay, the next area we can talk about is going to be budgeting and forecasting. With a budget, you have a few different models. Some folks really like a zero-based budget, like Profit First. And personally, I'm a fan of a straightforward budgeting in a business. Here's what my expected revenue is. Here are my expenses. Here's what I see having left over at the end of the years after all that. You do want to have a little information before doing a budget. You want prior year income, prior year expenses, what your revenue growth looks like, what your price increase is. Just like every business, you have to be raising prices. And you also want a rough estimate of an increase in your salary, your rent, your utility, and any other important expenses in your business. So you want to forecast the revenue expenses. It's a large part of the exercise. Using different journals will help you on what to expect to happen next year. And by journals, I do mean in the veterinary industry. You want to make sure that you see, hey, the trend is we are expecting a good year, or it's not really expected to be a good year. Prices are going up for medication because of supply issues, like during 2020, 2021. People don't have as much liquid cash available, and they're not able to really afford to take into account all of this. That's part of it. And the other thing you really want to take into account is seasonality. In most cases, not all cases, the winter months are probably going to be a little bit leaner. You have to take that into consideration. You can't assume a flat line throughout the entire year. If you make $120, you cannot assume that you will make $10 every single month, because it's not realistic. There will be months where you make $30. So, you make a fourth of the income. There'll be months where you make $5. So one of the things you can't do is say, hey, last year I made $100. Every month was the exact same, because it just never is. Let's talk about building a team. There's a lot of things that go into this. For vet techs, how many do you need? The general consensus is you need about 2.7 full-time equivalent tech and vet VAs per full-time vet. Why? Because there's going to be people out sick, there's going to be extra workload. But if you have 2 doctors, you need about 5.5 full-time equivalent. So 45 or 40 hours worth of work being done between the 5.5. So 200 plus hours per doctor. And I know, well, that's overstaffed. It's not a lot of times. You have to have these people. Full-time versus part-time. Do you need a full-time vet tech? Do you need a part-time vet tech? Do you need a full-time receptionist? Do you need a part-time receptionist? Do you need a full-time person to help dispense medications if you're doing an in-house pharmacy? Do you need a part-time, or are you doing it all online? That's an area that really has to be taken into account to say, what does this year look like? Receptionist. Again, you're always going to need someone to answer phones, book appointments, greet customers. The receptionist is one of the most important people to the customer, because it's the first face they see. If you have a receptionist that isn't friendly, people don't want to come back. I know that's always a weird one, but it's a fact of the matter where you have to have receptionists staffed and there. A lot of people like to have a veterinary assistant, a vet tech that can double as a receptionist. It doesn't always work that way. If there's an emergency with one of your patients, you might need that vet tech or that veterinary assistant to be helping. So that's one area to take into consideration when building a team. Next area is the office and practice manager. In a lot of small clinics, this doubles as the veterinarian, the owner, because it's what you have to do. As you grow, this is one of those areas that is extremely valuable, because it will help to lessen your workload, to know that everything in the office is being handled. The receptionists are getting scheduled as they're supposed to. The vet techs, the veterinary assistants, the workload is manageable. Same with practice manager. You can't afford to run out of supplies. It can come down to a loss of revenue if you don't have the supplies on hand you need. A good office and practice manager can help alleviate that. Bookkeepers, you have in-house, you have outsourced. You can hire an in-house one. There's a lot of benefits there. Typically, it's going to cost a bit more because of benefits such as 401k, health insurance, vacation time, but they're always there. The outsourced route, here at Henson CPA Group, it's something we specialize in, is outsourced accounting, bookkeeping, CFO, controller functions for the clinic, because we know that without proper numbers, running your clinic is just going to be a lot harder and a lot more difficult. Let's go ahead and shift over to risk management. A lot of areas here: economic factors, change in regulations, proper coverage, for the insurance emergency fund, diversifying that coverage, contingency plans, what happens if you get sick, what happens if equipment breaks. These are areas of risk that you have to think about. One of the things we can talk about is the supply chain issue. Again, like during COVID, it made it difficult to get a lot of supplies veterinarians needed. Another thing is political office can sway how likely someone is to pay and spend money on their animal. During the 2020-21, there was a large uptick in spend with pets. This year, I've seen quite a bit of downturn with how much people are spending because of an upcoming election. It's always an area you're looking at. You need to stay up to date on new regulations and how it will affect your clinic. This could be educational regulations. This could be zoning regulations. It's something that, as a clinic owner, as a veterinarian, it is paramount that you know what is happening to your business. Proper insurance can be a lifesaver if something goes wrong in the clinic. If you don't have the proper insurance and something catastrophic happens, an employee gets hurt or is going to be out for a bit, it could shut your clinic down for several days or permanently, depending on the severity. Contingency plans. What happens if you get sick? A lot of veterinarians are owner operators. They are working in their clinic. They are the only doctor on staff. They don't have vacation times. They can't get sick, because if they do get sick, they lose out on thousands of dollars a day in production. They can't make their bills. So you need a plan in place to say, if I get sick, this is a relief vet that I can hire to at least make sure that it's getting covered. I might not make a lot of profit that day, but I will make sure the bills are covered. What happens if your equipment breaks? If you have a digital x-ray machine break, how are you going to handle x-rays for your patients? Are you going to have to outsource that? We have to send them to another clinic. What if it's no longer under warranty? You can't have it repaired. What is your plan? So even having a quick and easy emergency fund will help with that. Putting away a certain amount of funds every month, knowing that it's always going to be there, can help reduce stress in running your clinic. The next area we want to talk about is going to be legal and regulatory compliance. You have to understand and comply. Ownership percentage, licensing, permits, zoning, tax, all areas that you need. The old saying goes, in business, you need 3 good people in your phone: a good lawyer, a good accountant, and a good financial advisor. That still holds true even in 2024 and later years. With the complexities many states have when it comes to business, you have to make sure you have someone in your corner that will help structure your company properly. For example, in California, you are not allowed to have a non-veterinarian own a part of a veterinary clinic. If you have someone wanting to invest in your company, how are you going to properly structure your entity if they aren't a licensed vet? There's a lot of people who are getting bought up in the veterinary industry with private equity money. In some states, it's not possible. So there is complexity there. Is your property properly licensed for commercial use? Do you need to look at rezoning this? A lot of people have been doing business for a number of years. They've gone through this, but this is really for the folks who are newer. You have to know what that property is allowed to be used for. Subscribing to a veterinarian journal. Veterinary journals are a great place to look for new federal regulations that can impact the veterinary industry. I mentioned that in another slide. It's extremely important to know what is happening, and even local veterinary chapters are able to help you with this, because those folks are looking at this. They are making sure they know what's going on. This is an area that they really thrive in, and that's why you pay the dues. The AHA, the VMG, all of these have things you're able to read and should be reading, because it helps better you as a veterinarian and as a business owner. Well, that will be it for today. Again, I'm Joseph Henson with Henson CPA Group. My contact information is on the screen. If you would like to talk, shoot me an email. I love hearing from you guys. And if you have anything else,